Hey, good morning. I'm RG. I'm a software engineer first before managing a FAB Lab in Mindanao. So when back when was smart, just like ever of us. And when we talk about FAB Labs, the first question we have in mind will be on the technical side, since that's our strength. But this morning, I'd like to talk about going beyond machines, since I believe that machines don't make successful FAB Labs, but practices that people do. Now, I'd like to give you a setting of how the Philippines has been establishing its own Fab Labs. My Fab Lab is this one, the only one in the South. It's the first one in the South. Now, I've been going for one Fab Lab over the other, and I've been collating and curating, dissecting and digesting common problems, and I realized that the problems with the sustainability of every lab, I don't know with your Fab Lab, but in our Fab Labs in the Philippines, it's not the lack of manpower to do the technical things. It's not the lack of people who has design skills nor machine operation skills, but it's the lack of how to properly manage sustainable Fab Labs that can make almost anything. So, I had the opportunity to have a fellowship in Boston. I was able to work in FabLab Roxbury through the help of the United States government and Department of State. This is my workplace in FabLab Roxbury, Boston. I had a meeting with Neil and Susan of the first FabLab in South End. So I was able to have chit chats with the people from FAB Foundation. I think you know Luciano, Jean-Luc, and Pamela. And I've been telling them that our problem in the Philippines, and I don't know with other Fab Labs, is not the lack of technical skills, which Fab Academy is solving. I know Ted is here, and Ted is campaigning for the proper skills on how to technically make almost anything. And that's technical. But our organization, the FAB Foundation, do not have a managerial course that will teach not the makers, but will train the managers who will be managing the makers. And I think that's the most pivotal important role of how to successfully manage a Fab Lab. Don't just train those makers, but train the managers who can properly manage and sustainably form a Fab Lab that can stand the test of time. So, after my fellowship, I came up with a realization that for us to achieve really sustainable development goals, say for instance, good job and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, there is a need for us to train managers of Fab Labs that goes beyond what our machines are doing, that goes beyond what our materials are doing. So for us to really achieve these sustainable development goals, it starts with properly trained Fab Lab managers. Now, this talk this morning is just a very short kiss of what I have realized, and it starts with the M's of FabLab. This is my modified M's of FabLab. Now, our favorite M in our FabLab will be the machines. That's what we are so passionate about. We are so passionate about the specs. We are so passionate about what these machines can be doing. And on the procurement side, on establishing an operation and then operating our Fab Labs, this is our main concern. But more than the machine, I think, for the Fab Lab managers who are here this morning, it's not just the machines, but also the money. We need much money, and what I mean by much, because there isn't any sustainable model for a Fab Lab, financially sustainable model for a makerspace out there. You can Google, you can research, and makerspace out there fail. Simply because we are focusing much on the machines, and we're not focusing on proper and sustainable way for funding or sourcing funds for the lab to run. So that's our second M that I hope that you will shift and change your hat from being a technical guy to being a manager. So you have the machines, money, and the methods. Now, more than the machines and more than the money, it's actually the processes, the systems that should be there in place that should govern our Fab Lab, and this makes our lab sustainable. I hope that you can think, I know we have different modality of managing our Fab Labs, different ways and means, but I hope that your systems should be in place, not just the operational systems, the financial systems, the way things are done, and organizational culture that sometimes we tend to forget. Now, next M is very much related to machine, our materials. Now, I live in the southern Philippines, and very far from Manila, our problem is really on materials and inventory. Thus, I think some FabLab managers who have this problem are dealing with supply chain. Now, I know that we have different instances on how we are going to deal and source of materials for other Fab Labs, but I think we need to learn proper way of not just being part of a supply chain, but making our own supply chain for our lab. So you can think of materials also, machines, money, methods, materials, and this, our community, or should I say, the makers. Now, beyond our machines, it's actually the community that we are building. I don't call them customers. I also don't call them clients. I call them our community. Since these are the people that we should be cultivating, this will either make or break our Fab Labs for what our machines, for what our money and materials, what are methods in place, what are systems in place. If we do not have the makers who are patronizing and are part of the community that we are building as Fab Labs. Now, it's not just also those ends. I think it's proper that we should market what we have been doing in our lab. Now, there are Fab Labs who have been doing excellently, but aren't really exposed, but aren't really reported in national media. There are Fab Labs out there who are making an impact in their community, but aren't really recognized. So I think we should really come up with marketing platforms and instances by which we not to boast, but really encourage others to be part of the maker community that we are establishing. And I think we need a very good marketing for this, for your Fab Lab. Now, on top of all of this, the most important resource of any organization, specifically of any lab, will be its men. Now, it will not be machines, it will not be methods, it will not be materials and your marketing that makes your Fab Lab successful. At the end of the day, if you want to be sustained, if you want to create an impact in your community, if we have the vision to achieve our sustainable development goals for our community, we need to find the right men, and not just find the right men, make them stay. So, now this is the ends that I'm proposing, that as FabLab managers, we should shift, as FabLab people, we should shift our hat from being technical to managerial and be sensitive of these things and how we should manage these ends. Now, in all of this, I think this is a very classic classic model of management, the functions of management, from planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. What do we need to plan, organize, lead, and control? Simply, the 7 resources, the 7 M's of FabLab. We need to train ourselves and learn and pivot and apply and test and refine again our managerial practices from planning, leading, organizing, and controlling of all these M's of FabLab. Now, one very important thing that we should understand in the functions of management are the proper objectives. Now, in terms of planning, sometimes we, as technical people, we just go to the machines directly. We forget to plan, thus really plan to fail, as what John Maxwell said. So, in terms of objectives, through our planning phase, among those 7 N's, we need to clear out, really put it in writing, because if it is not written, it does not exist. Our goals and our objectives. We should have it clear that we should plan what we see our FabLab, not just for the year to come, for the years ahead to come. We should see strategically what will be our FabLab 5 or 10 years from now. Now, this is very basic that we need to come up with our vision, what we want our lab to be, and our mission. Now, I'm very strict with this in our lab because our interns need to memorize this and have this by heart. Explain this to me. Explain this to other people, how we envision our lab to be and how we are going to reach that vision through our mission. Where do we want to go and how do we get there? Now, in practice, I know that some of us, I myself am a startup founder, so I ran my lab in a startup way, in a very lean way. So you might be able to come up with a lean canvas for your FAB Lab. Since as FAB Lab we don't want a very long business plan, you can just make your own lean canvas for your lab. So this, I think, has been our Bible and our roadmap for the past 3 years. This is in its 4th iteration already, since business models and lean canvases should be changed, should be refined from time to time. Now, I have been doing trainings for lean canvas and making your own lean canvas for your FAB Lab, depending on who your customer segments are in your market. So you might as well come up with clear canvas of your objectives through this business model. So I really highly suggest this. Now, plans, you may also not be overwhelmed with planning, because you can dissect your plans to long-term or strategic plans, medium-term or tactical plans, or short-term or operational plans. Now, what we sometimes focus on are just the operational plans, how we live for the day in our lab, how we finish projects, how we finish this 5-day project, this 1-month project. But beyond that, we should be able to see as managers, if we need to be sustainable in our labs, we need to also come up with tactical or medium-term plans, the annual plans, or the quarter or the mid-year plans, and the long-term plans through strategic operations that we are doing in our lab. Now that's planning. Now the second part that we should do with our ends will be organizing. Now you might ask me, how do we organize? Now organizing is just simple. It's just putting in place resources and modalities so that we might reach our objectives. Now, here we talk about organizational design, we talk about organizational culture, delegation, and change management. We need to understand that we have no choice. For us to successfully, sustainably manage our lab, we need to organize our operations. And the way we do that, this is my favorite tool that I have been suggesting. This is the Kaplan and Norton. This is the Balance Scorecard. So you can Google and you can learn how you can use the Balance Scorecard for you to organize not just the financial perspective, since that's how we see sustainability. Beyond financial sustainability, we should also understand the customer's perspective, learning and growth, and how we are dealing with our internal processes. So you might use Kaplan and Norton's Balance Scorecard to organize your lab for you to achieve the objectives that you made in your planning phase. And that's what we have been doing also in our lab. Now, aside from planning, organizing, a very vital role that we sometimes forget, but we are already doing among our community is leading. How we inspire people to be part of our lab, and especially internal and external stakeholders. Now, again, leading will have what we organize achieve our objectives. And here in leading, we talk about leadership, motivation, and in no way can we be successful without proper communication. Now, in terms of leading, I have had a bad experience. I'm a bad startup founder, by the way. This is our startup. This is Web Forest Digital Solutions. It's a software development firm that I have co-founded in the Philippines. Now, my job here is done remotely. My job is simply to discipline people and sometimes to the extent of firing people. And I don't like that. I don't like delivering bad news to people simply because we haven't learned how to become leaders. Now, as FAB Lab people, we should go beyond being just makers, but as leaders also. Now, this is what my big boss told me, and I will never forget this, that in being a manager, especially that of the labs, since people are getting out of the labs, people are making their own FAB Labs, people are getting passing through our labs, she told me that the second thing we need to do after finding the right people for our Fab Lab is to make sure that we make them stay. Now, I don't know what's been happening with your Fab Labs, but as for me, I think the most important resource of our organization are our people. If we can't make them stay, we are losing. If we are not also producing other leaders or other community builders, other Fab Lab managers, we are also not doing our role of achieving our sustainable goals. Now, we have said a lot of goodbyes to people, and this is the sweetest goodbye that I did to two people in our lab. This is Andre, one of our interns, and this is Ron, our former FabLab staff. I was so sad to say goodbye to them, but I realized that we really did our part, since right now, they are also managing their own Fab Labs in the Philippines. If you remember the Fab Labs in the Philippines, Andre is managing the Philippine Science High School Fab Lab. He used to be with our lab, but he's managing his own Fab Lab right now. And Ron is managing a Fab Lab in Naga, in Legazpi, in Naga, in the Bicol province in the Philippines. So I think if we should have a choice. If we can't make them stay, they should also influence other Fab Labs, and that should be our goal. So planning, leading, organizing, controlling, and leading, and this I think is our term in our lab, that if we can't make them stay, at least make social currency. This is our term that I've been saying that let's use people to influence what we have been doing and make impact to our community, and we call that social currency in our lab. Okay, so these are the two managers that our lab has produced. FAB Mindanao. Now, controlling is what's very concrete among the functions of management, since it's what we see on a day-to-day basis. Planning and leading are done on the back door, while controlling is done on the onset, along with leading. Now, controlling still goes back to objectives. And here, we see systems, processes, value chains, supply chains, evaluation, and quality control. Now, sometimes in running a Fab Lab, we think as if practice makes perfect. But practice doesn't need perfect. Evaluated practice makes one perfect. Thus, proper evaluation of our processes, of our methods, should be done as part of controlling. Practice doesn't make perfect. Evaluated practice makes one perfect. Thus, as Fab Lab managers, or as FabLab machine operators, we should focus on evaluation. And that's part of controlling. Now, I know that FabLab managers, especially those who receive funding from the government or private agencies, are tasked to make reports. 90% of my time are doing reports as FabLab manager. How I wish that I can tinker machines. But I think you can, this is what we have been doing. We have been doing our lab by the end of every month to come up with metrics, measurable goals, so that we can see how we have been doing so far. And also establishing a booking system can be a very important thing that we can do, integrated into our calendar, in a Google Calendar. So this is the lab that I'm managing right now. We are the smallest lab in the Philippines, but I think it's not about the size. It's also not about the funding that we see, but the people that are doing, how we influence next generation, how we influence people to achieve really sustainable goals that we anchor in objectives by planning, organizing, leading, and controlling through the proper management of the ends of our lab. Now, if there's one thing that I want you to realize, that this is just for 1 minute, if there's one thing that I want you to realize, I want you to think that it's easier to move machines than to move people. That's why I hope that you can go beyond machines to achieve these two goals and have a sustainable and well-managed Fab Lab. Good morning.
Try to see a different perspective of a FabLab manager. And now we will have a Japanese speaker, Takasu Masaru.
Power. power, sir.
Okay, okay.